Professor Suarez coming to you from my apartment. Unfortunately, I was under the weather this weekend, but I did want to make sure that I got this out to you guys because it does have some important information about the chapters that we are going over this week. Chapter 4 in the Social Media Bible discusses a little bit about some marketing concepts that I want to elaborate a little bit on today. And then also in the Go Mobile textbook throughout, they do talk about different marketing ideas because with social media, social networking, and utilizing the internet to your business advantage really encompasses marketing at its core and social networking in its extensions. So we're going to be going over the sales cycle, total addressable market, serviceable market, and serviceable obtainable market today, as well as branding and some other key concepts that are going to help you out through this process. So let's get started. So the sales cycle encompasses the idea that most consumers, most customers go through these 4 stages before they buy. And the 4 stages are as follows: awareness, search, research, and purchase. And if I could guide you through this, through the cycle, through an example, I'm going to use the one from the book. They go from looking for insurance. So the customer becomes aware of the idea that they need some type of insurance to protect them from the risk of loss. Then they go to a specific search for what they want insurance for. If they happen to own a car, they decide maybe I should get car insurance, which protects me from the loss of losing the value in my car. That might be associated with a car crash or hitting a pothole or just normal deterioration of my car. So car insurance, right? Then from searching on what is entitled in car insurance, they do some research. They go to different companies and figure out what is the best car insurance company and ask for a quote. And then the final piece, which is over here, is the New York car insurance quote. They find a company that they feel is the best value for their dollar and they buy. This is one key piece of the logical process of sales. Now, what happens to be the key piece that Go Mobile focuses on, which is actually pretty different, is the emotional side, which we're going to talk about a little bit more as we move forward. Another way to look at the market and the people that you're looking to influence is a top-down approach. And what this means is we're looking at TAM, SAM, and SUM. So TAM is your total addressable market. This is the whole market that could potentially be reached by your product or services or whatever you are looking to advertise. SAM is the serviceable attainable market, and this is the market that you have reach over that could potentially buy your product. And then SUM is the serviceable obtainable market, which is a more focused approach of your clients. These are the ones that are already buying your product, right? So one way to look at this with reference to cars is the total addressable market is everybody in the market looking for cars, right? The serviceable addressable market would be people who want high luxury cars and high performance cars. And then the serviceable obtainable market is anybody who buys a Lexus or anybody who's in the market for a Mercedes-Benz. So it goes from out all the way in. And the reason we take this targeted approach is because when you advertise, you want to focus on your serviceable obtainable market, even if you could perhaps reach somebody in the total market, right? Because what happens is with all these different advertising, all these different influences trying to grab our attention, it's very difficult to stand out. So the real focus of what you're trying to do with social media, any marketing campaign, or anything that's trying to influence somebody to buy something is to stand out. And you're not going to do that saying that you just sell cars. You're not going to do that saying that you just sell insurance. You have to be very specific. You have to be very to the point. And it has to touch somebody in their emotional values and beliefs. So another aspect that comes into question is, how do you visualize the market as a whole? And statistics likes to utilize the bell-shaped curve to describe the distribution in general of a population. And this right here is called a normal distribution, and this shape right here is what we call a bell-shaped curve. So if we think about this as far as the market and how many people are buying, right? And if I were to do an XY chart over here, right? This is the amount of people who purchase. I'm going to put amount. And please excuse the way my handwriting of purchasers. And this right here, the x-axis, is the time it takes them to actually purchase. So what you see here, right, on this side here of the chart is the early adopters or the innovators, right? First, get this F. Right? The early innovators are on the left side here, and these are the people that purchase early on. But as you can see here, not a lot of people are buying, right? Because it's still a low amount. But then as time moves on, more people start to buy the products as time moves on. But unfortunately, there we get to a point that a new product might come into the market, or people just get sick of the product and they buy less and less and less, right? And it starts going down. So the main focus of advertising, as you would imagine, maybe you'd want to advertise to these people here, because this is where the biggest chunk, about 75 to 80% of the market lays, right? This chunk right here. But the reality is, there's so much advertising, there's so many people trying to get our attention, so many people trying to influence you to make a purchase, that you trying to advertise in this point, you're gonna end up falling up by the wayside, and nobody's gonna pay attention to you. The reality is, you want to advertise. Can you guys take a guess? To these guys right over here. Boom. Innovators and early adopters. You want to advertise to what I say, the fringes. And this is actually an idea that's coined by a TED talker. And I always recommend my students view some of the TEDx conversations because they're really good. But he was saying that most advertisement that actually gets a viral attention are the ones that advertise to the fringes, to these innovators. And I mean, you could even advertise to these laggards over here too. But the idea is to advertise to the people that are on the outside, not these people here, because you are more likely, A, to get attention because it's so different, so distinct. And the other piece is you want to advertise to these innovators over here because they're going to be your biggest advocates and your biggest fans. These people are going to be the ones who actually promote what you're doing. I can't tell you how many times, me personally, I've bought stuff because somebody recommended it to me. And I have one friend in particular who, whenever they're going to make a purchase or make a decision, they call me and they ask me, Augusto, what do you think about this investment? Or what do you think about me buying this or setting this up? Because the last thing you want is to have buyer's remorse. You don't want to buy something and then somebody says, "Oh, you bought that?" Like, that's like cheap. Like, why would you spend so much money on such a insignificant product? And then you feel horrible because you're like, "Man, I spent all this money. I felt good about it, and I made a bad choice." Right? The other piece, another example I could give you is iPhone versus Samsung, iPhone versus Android. I can't tell you how many times I'm in a table, somebody sees a phone, like, "Oh, you have a Samsung phone," and we get into a conversation about which product is better or which product is worse. And what's interesting is, based on some of these conversations, you never know if somebody actually turns around and say, "You know what, I'm going to end up buying an iPhone." And it could be something so insignificant like, "Oh, I like that the iPhone text messages come on blue when I get other iPhone text messages," or that Samsung has a better computer chip in it that's 5 times faster than the iPhone. I mean, these are examples. These aren't the real numbers, but these things and these conversations can sometimes lead to the sale. So imagine if you have a product or you have a client that you're working for, and you're trying to advertise to these people, and you end up getting them to advocate for what you're promoting or what you're selling. This makes it 10 times more effective than any advertisement you did, because if that one person saw that one advertisement and told 10 of his friends, "Oh, this service provides X, Y, and Z for this price," your advertisement did its job, versus you just getting influence or an impression. And that's really the key to effective advertising and effective social media. So what this entails is doing some research, right? So marketing is about 80% research and 20% design. And the reason I say that, because most marketing firms will spend a good portion of time reviewing and researching what is the demand and what the demand is looking for when it comes to products, consumption, and sales, and what really works. They get into Marketing gets pretty sticky because it even gets into psychological aspects and things that trigger you psychologically, that you as a consumer aren't even aware is being done to you. But for the sake of this class, we're going to do market research with respect to our interests, our companies, and subject material that we are reviewing, because we are looking at these Fortune 500 companies. So what is encompassed in market research? The most common thing that I find is SWOT analysis, which encompasses strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And the reason that SWOT analysis is so effective is because it takes into account all different variables associated with your company or your marketing campaign's success. The other piece, when it comes to researching customer demand, and by customer demand, I just mean what is it that the customers want, right? And how much are they willing to buy? Aspects like that. When doing that kind of research, you have to look at it from a qualitative perspective and a quantitative perspective. And both the approaches together can make a more clear image about what it is you're trying to advertise. Qualitative means that you're looking at aspects that aren't necessarily able to retain some kind of value. It's very difficult to measure qualitative, but you can get some insight on the general consensus of how people think, feel, or are geared towards. So an example of qualitative and a qualitative assessment is confidence level with regards to their ability to make a good purchase when it comes to car insurance, or how honest do you feel this person is as a salesperson. Customer service is really qualitative because it's very hard to measure some aspects of the customer service experience. If you feel like somebody is treating you fairly, that's your perspective. And the same person might have the same experience in the same store and view it completely differently. So it's very hard to quantify, to measure in a specific number the values that are being associated with some of these questions. But they are important because they give you insight to the way a company, a service, or a product is perceived. Then you have quantitative analysis, which really encompasses things that are measurable. So distance, weight, volume, all these aspects you could put a number to, you could put a measurement to, and you could quantify, put a quantity to how much is associated with each. So some key features here: when looking for funding, proof of concept, or information for financial endeavors, quantitative analysis is appropriate. So if you're looking to sell something, it's important to know how many people are willing to pay for that service or product, right? Not to say that they're going to buy your product, but how many people are willing to pay for that kind of service? And another way to find that out is if there's a similar company that's providing a similar service or similar product, how well are they doing? How are their profit revenues? And most public companies have to put up this information anyways. That's why when we're reviewing our Fortune 500 companies, it's going to be a lot easier to look up this information versus a private company or a social media aficionado like a YouTuber like PewDiePie or a big baller brand, which is privately owned, that they don't put this information out up front, so you have to speculate. The second piece is when looking for an idea, a direction, or inspiration, qualitative research can give you much more insight than quantitative. And this is because our human nature and the nature of the consumer is to make decisions emotionally first and logically second. So getting the emotional piece down is very important and very difficult, because even if your research points that the consumer might want, let's say for pasta sauce, for example, the consumer may want to have a flavorful, rich, traditional taste. And then you find out that they want a thick and creamy taste based on the quantitative. So, then you have to review both to really figure out what's the best product to put out there and which one's going to make you the most profit and the most revenue. So to kind of speak a little bit more about SWOT, just to make sure you understand, strength is what encompasses your company and what your brand might be good at. Weakness encompasses what your company or your brand would be bad at. Yeah. And then opportunities is where can you improve, where your competition is lacking. And threats is what are aspects that your competition can take advantage of that you can't. And in analyzing these things, you will be able to review. In analyzing these things, you'll be able to get a better understanding of where you stand and what your position is with regards to marketing. And a key thing in business or any endeavor that you take up is to be honest with yourself, because the last thing you want to do is be put in a position where you or the company you're representing is compromised because there were things that you didn't take into account. So we discussed it a little bit before, but branding is an image, logo, or reputation that is purposefully associated with a business, product, or service. So to kind of break it down, a brand is the idea, logo, or image associated with a service that a business might offer, the actual business itself, or the product. The easiest example is probably Uber, because everybody now uses Uber, and it's even referenced as a verb now. You Uber to a location. You don't take a taxi anymore. And the Uber logo, very, very succinct. It's like a circle with a square and a line through it. But if you see it on a car, you automatically associate it with an Uber service. Uber, when you think about Uber, you think about convenience, think about cost effectiveness. All these things are tied into the brand. And that's not a coincidence. That was thought out in a process that went through marketing as well as the fact that their service is so effective. So branding is a key component to really developing a way to reach out to followers or make impressions. And it's a key aspect to advertising to the fringes. But the first step starts with brainstorming. You have to be able to develop an idea that's worthwhile. So as you can see here, when I was developing the idea for the social media site that I would do for the class, as an example for extra credit, I had a couple different things that were spread out as far as my career went and my expertise and my knowledge. So the obvious one was personal finance. So I went ahead and went into doing that as well. I had some other extensions that went up, but I felt more comfortable talking about personal finance since I had so much experience with that. But as you can see, if you do a spreadsheet or a Venn diagram or a spider chart of different ideas, you can start mapping out which ones you're drawn to, which ones you're not. I remember in brainstorming some of the events I would do, I would use some methods that's used by system engineers where they would put ideas on post-it notes or loose pieces of paper, and they would put it up on the board, and they would have meetings with other engineers, and the ideas would go up, and the things that people were drawn to would be in one chunk of the wall, and things that people were not necessarily drawn to were put on another piece. But then they would use the board to draw connections, different ideas together, and come up with a solution. But the idea, generally speaking, is there's different ways to come up with what you feel is the best way to brand not just your product, but yourself. But that requires that you brainstorm and come up with different creative solutions to some of the problems associated with branding. So, in looking what other competition is doing as far as branding, with what I'm doing with the financial services, a lot of people are using social media to promote their wealth, the money that they have, and what they do with it. On the left side, you see over here, this guy is standing in front of a gold Bentley. On the right side, this person is in a nice suit with some nice shoes, no socks. Guess it's hot where he is. But this is what they're doing to attract a certain kind of customer, a customer that wants to have this kind of wealth and value, and is willing to take the risk to put up maybe $500 or $600 of disposable income to make substantially more money. So the question then becomes, how do they get their sales? So over here, I have a couple people that have contacted me as I started doing social media, and they're asking me if I want to do foreign exchange and trades and trade binary and buy cryptocurrency, all these things which would immediately, or what they advertise would immediately increase my cash flow and my revenue stream. In most cases, people who follow these people probably don't have any exposure or any experience with the financial markets, which to me is kind of interesting because, because of my experience and my expertise in finance, I have a very good understanding of what's encompassed in foreign trade and currency exchange. But the only reason I looked it up was because I had some idea of those things, and that was a way to make money. Interestingly enough, these people advertise to, I'm assuming, people younger than me, right, who are looking to make money quick and may have $500 or $600 that their parents are willing to lend them so they could make more money. And these are the people that they're targeting, right? How effective is it? For me, it's not very effective. For me to have to give up 500 to a person to invest it, and they make a cut on my money, first of all, I have to trust the person. If I don't trust you and I don't know you, there's a very small chance I'm going to give you my money. The second thing is I have to trust your product. If I've never seen your product, I don't know what tools you're using, I've never heard of the tools you're using, I don't know how effective it is, that makes me even less likely to give you my money. And the third piece, I have to trust the company. If you're not coming from a corporation or a financial firm that license you to have that capacity, or license you to have a fiduciary capacity to deal with my money. And fiduciary just means that they are looking out for my best interest with money, then I'm even less likely to commit to giving you my money, right? So does sales through social media work? It doesn't if you do it the wrong way. So an example is, let's say I wanted to do a similar business strategy with them. So the first thing that social media does is it exposes you to the idea that you could potentially make more money, right? The second thing I would do is develop a website or a company that has some sense of legitimacy. Oh, there's a website that you could look up. I feel more comfortable. Then the third thing is I would show videos on the website of the tools I use and testimonials of people who have benefited from using the service. And this would make any customer feel more comfortable giving maybe $100. But when it comes to giving $500, $1,000, $2,000 to be invested, then you have to go into other aspects and you have to call the customer. You have to be available for the customer, because for some of these customers, this is money that they have difficulty parting with. If it's, on the other hand, people who are affluent that want to invest their money in a safer investment, the last people they're going to call is these guys. But for those other people who are looking to make some quick money and are willing to put up the money, there's things that need to happen first. So branding tips on social media. I went over it a little bit, but here's a couple of tips that are on the book in chapter 4 for Social Media Bible. The first thing is show you're a real person and not a scam artist or a fan page. The second piece is explain why the real people in your real company should be trusted. 3, make it painfully easy for visitors to contact you. 4, signal you're still there consistently. And 5, captivate with the visual design. So an update for how I'm doing. In the past week, I was able to get about 165 followers by following some people. Some of the strategies I'm using right now, since it's very slow, I'm following some people. Like I said, following some of those financial investors, traders, right? Putting posts up consistently every day. So it's only been 10 days. So I'm getting about 10 to 15 people per day. Once I get to, I think in about a week, I'll get to about 200 to 250. At that point, it becomes a little bit difficult, but by then I'll have enough content to start advertising to my actual clients, right? So right now I'm just kind of putting stuff up, and the total addressable market is in my vicinity. I'm still a novice or a lurker per se. I'm not really getting into the point where I'm a leader or really influencing the market, right? But I'm looking at different options. So Snapchat is a very interesting application because of the way it's designed. It's very close knit, and it's you can't, not as of yet, you can't take content out of Snapchat and put it on another feed. Businesses that could take whatever they put on Snapchat or whatever they have and able to put it on different social media sites have a big advantage because it reduces the time that they have to put up content, right? And like some of the tips saying before, for branding, putting up content consistently is a very important piece of getting influence and getting people to get involved with your product or getting them interested. So Snapchat I see as a potential opportunity. I'm still looking at ways to design some of the content I put out, but I think I could put up some pretty good content. And here's an example of a SWOT analysis that I did for the Instagram feed. Some of the strengths is I have a consistent feed, decent amount of followers, decent amount of content. The weakness is because of lack of time. I have 3 classes. I have my own business that I'm running. It's a little bit difficult to have like the side project, but you know, if I do it consistently and use some of the tools that I have at my disposal, I don't have to put a lot of content. So fortunately, what's good with the Instagram feed and doing it professional is any content that I put up on Instagram automatically goes to my Facebook and vice versa. What I'm trying to develop some content that I could put on my Instagram, my Facebook, and my Snapchat. Other websites that other businesses might use include Yelp, Google is actually an interesting social media site because they don't have anybody on their social media, but Google, if you Google a business, the ratings and some of the comments of the Google users is actually up there. So that's something that I need to keep an eye on. And I don't believe Uber Eats does comments yet, but it is something to take into account if they are using that service. So something to look at. Opportunities, Snapchat and Facebook, obviously. Leverage community events, leverage local promotions, target young men. As you see here, 84% of my followers are men. So that might be a good place to start focusing in on the serviceable, attainable market. Some threats: sleeker, wealthier promoters draw attention. So dressing nicer, spending a little bit more money on my self-image might help. The other piece is scam artists are rampant in the financial industry. So trying not to come off as a scam artist or coming off disingenuine is a big piece. And the ways to avoid that is developing the website and developing the different places that people could come up, which we'll go over in the later weeks because that is an important piece. And it does make you more marketable when you are applying for jobs. This is the last slide, but again, if you have any questions and want to reach out to me, my email and contact information is on the course. So thank you guys so much for your time and good luck this week on the assignments. Take care.